thank you very much for your interest in pursuing this position of executive assistant to chairman's office. And I must say that your seniors from PGPX, they've done well in that kind of a position now. Yeah. Oh, yes, Saswi Kothari or Aditya Bansal?
Aditya Bansal.
Yeah, there were two of them, one after another, who went in. And Yashasvi, of course, is now in Houston. He's become CFO so after 2-3 years. And Aditya Bansal has just stepped in. Okay. So tell us, sorry, so what are some of the things which you hear from Aditya about good things about this job, as well as some hassles and challenges about this role?
So I think he's completely enjoying the role. I mean, after some stint in McKinsey, like RPG has given him a vista of opportunities wherein on an everyday basis investment bankers come to him and pitch for investment. Sometimes he's looking for due diligence of JV proposals. Sometimes this and sometimes that. So every day for him is a unique experience. So now he keeps talking about the experience which is getting at RPG and not, I mean, CTC or something. These things have now become secondary. So that's something which I've always had in my job also. So I've never really valued CTC as much as the experience. So I think he's really enjoying, and he's keep telling me that you want to come to RPG, this is one of the best places to work for. Given the kind of growth plans this company has in each of the sectors in which it operates, be it tires or infrastructure or specialty.
So that's great. You're looking at experience, and it would be nice to know more about your experience and its relevance for this role in particular. So just walk me through the highlights of experience, and you can accentuate the aspects which are relevant for this particular position.
Okay, firstly, sir, I was actually acting as EA to the unit head of domestic business development and coal operations in Aditya. He's like the joint executive president, Mr. Ramesh Agarwal. So I worked as EA to him for Mr. Ramesh Agarwal. So he worked. I worked for him for 1.5 years before he moved to Egypt to take over one of the textile units. So, sir, in the EA function, the most critical thing is that. So what I learned from my limited experience there was 1 minute of Mr. Agarwal's time was. To save 1 minute of Mr. Agarwal's time, I would have loved to spend 2 hours and crunch all the data and go to him and say, sir, this is the number, let's act on that. Sir, on this EA role, effectively, a lot of people think that EAs are just about talking to various functions and getting reviews done. But in my case, what happened was, as an EA, I was actually doing work for the unit. That time, we were working through very challenging times. So this company which I work for, SM Mining and Industries Limited, this company has got a traditional iron ore business which is worth around 2,500 crores per annum of iron ore merchant mining with bottom line of 1,200 crores. Now, in order, so that's a very high margin kind of. This is a cash cow of the Aditya Birla Group. Okay. So now, this company, in order to diversify, ventured into contract coal mining. So this project was the first of its kind in India, wherein Coal India outsourced an entire mine, Mahanadi Coalfield, Bhubaneswari coal mine, a 20 million ton project to us. Because this outsourcing has been unorganized for the last 20-30 years, and they have not really done things the way an institutional player would do. So now when we did it as an entry strategy, we bid really low. 128.70 was the entry strategy. Margins which are projected were 3 to 5%. Somehow our business had got the approval from Mr. Birla. But when we actually started executing the project, new costs surfaced up. So financial model has its own limitations. It captures cost to an extent and assumes some linearity or exponential growth, but that didn't happen. Now, when I was EA to him, we used to go to the site and keep on asking about the operations of business. Now, I was a CA and there was some very unique dimensions to this. My bosses actually sent me to the mine pit head, and I was there with the engineers, with the cross-functional team, and you used to see, so coal mining is like you blast the overburden, and then gets exposed the coal, and then with the surface miner you remove it. Now this overburden, I used to see trucks going and I used to see large boulders, for example. So I used to tell them that why are these boulders so large? So he said, what will you understand? You are a chartered accountant. I said that if these boulders are large, that means your blasting is not being efficient. So you are not doing blasting properly, so you are getting large boulders. So in case of large boulders, you have got trucks which have got idle space, but you are consuming the same quantum of fuel. And then they were standing, you are a CA, how do you understand this? I mean, this is the goal. Because as an EA, you have to be really responsible for bottom line. So in this 1.5 years where I was there as an EA, I was actually responsible for the bottom line. We faced situations in the business where the VP finance left, the CEO left because the business had lost 30% of its net worth in the first 6 months. So both of them lost. Both of them resigned. The whole team was demotivated, and there came a lot of reporting requirements from the chairman's office. Plus, Grasim was our consortium partner. They kept questioning what exactly are happening. So those were very turbulent times. So as an ESI, I actually started feeling responsible for the business, and then, given the kind of latitude I had, I started questioning the ops guys, the mining guys, and the procurement guys, and started questioning where we could add even 1 rupee of value to the business. So even it would be like project import benefit. So the mining machinery which used to be imported, no one really thought that there was a chapter 9701 of the Customs Tariff Act, where 10% of these spares also could be imported at zero project duty. So no one thought it. I mean, and project import benefit on this spares. We started doing it, and when it started yielding results, or simple things like centralizing procurement at Calcutta for the various projects, and then go for C-form billing and consolidate. So those things were really amazing. And then because I was part of the EA office, I used to monitor the business and facilitate the review of the business by the business heads, as well as get the credit rating done, and then we were going for special purpose vehicle project financing. So everything, I was involved inside out into all aspects of the business, and this is one thing about the EA role which I really loved. So at the age of 27, 28 or 29, you're being sitting with the business heads and the CFOs of the world and talking and giving inputs which are being appreciated. I think that is something which...
And tell me a situation when you did some analysis and you made recommendation, but you discovered that they were not the right recommendations.
Yeah, so given this C-form benefit itself, in my over enthusiasm, I recommended the site to examine the possibility of using C-form for steel and cement benefit, and C-form benefit for steel as well as cement.
Okay.
Now, when I actually got the idea to be examined, I learned harsh realities that in Jharkhand they don't issue C-forms because the government is so cash strapped that they will not issue C-forms. And then also fine reading of the legislative provisions, where I got to know that cement benefit will not be available on structural steel if it is being used in a workshop. Then I did not yield. I gave some construct that this is moving structures, it is machinery, so it's a workshop on which you have this earth moving machinery which is moving. So you gave it some construct, get legal opinion done, and it worked. So it didn't, it was not accepted in the first day, but eventually I got it done. So that is, it worked out. That I realized that yeah, sometimes because you're in power, you've got fancy ideas and you give it to the unit head or to the project head, but then come up a lot of practical aspects, which in course of time I started realizing that yes, in India the dynamics of doing business are very different, especially in mining for sure.
And think about another situation where you've got some inputs from another division, because you're often depending upon data that you get from others, and it's quite possible that some of that may not be accurate data, it may not be validated data, but you got it because you put pressure on them and you wanted some numbers, so you got some numbers.
Yes.
And you move forward. In how do you know that what you're giving to unit head is actually validated data, because he or she is depending upon you?
So that, to be honest, this was a problem that I faced in the beginning because I was new to the mining industry. So they gave this explosive, so any parameter, be it diesel consumption or explosive, I got data, I presented it to my boss, and there were times when this data was incongruent. But later then I started developing heuristics and rules of thumb. So what are the industry benchmarks? I started talking to the vendors and ask them that if you got a 12 cubic meter excavator, what is the productivity per hour? So if they say that the benchmark is 650 to 700 cubic meter per hour, and the site is saying that they cannot do 450 to 500 max, then I started questioning site that then if the equipment vendor is saying something, you are saying something, where is the disconnect? So that in course of time, by interacting all the more with people across different places, I got to have a holistic view of things, and then I started questioning the data, and that is where my value add would have been. Otherwise, I would have been just a postman, getting data from the site and just giving it to my boss.
What about connecting with the macroeconomic factors? Because oftentimes the kind of work which is involved at unit head level requires, you're making decisions, but you're equally doing some crystal ball in terms of outlook to the future. You've had that kind of situation.
Yeah, so sir, one of the projects that we bid for and eventually one was this around $2 billion Mahan Coal project. That is a joint venture of Nalco Industries and SR, which is in Singrauli, Madhya Pradesh.
Right.
The bidding process for this extended for 1.5 years. And in course of this, as far as the macro is concerned, eventually they had asked us to bid using 12 cubic meter excavators, which could be used, diesel could be used in that. Later they said 34 cubic meter hydraulic shovels, which have to be electric operated. Now the dynamics of this were very different. So on a macroeconomic scale, number one, this 34 cubic meter was completely imported. You didn't even have tire manufacturing of this in India. And after we bid for the project, emerged L1, this rupee sliding to 69 happened. And then when we were doing mark-to-market losses, there was sudden requirement from group chairman office that all projects have to be mark-to-market. The project suddenly yielded an NPV of negative 250 crores, 300 crores. And then we realized that what exactly were we doing. Similarly, sir, in one of the existing projects which we were implementing in Bhubaneswar in Odisha for MCL, we had an exposure of 150 crores for equipment import. Given the fact that hedging itself costed 6-7%, we took a view that let's keep it unhedged, and even if adverse fluctuations happen, let them happen. But then from 52 it moved to 65 and then hedge started rolling. So macroeconomics of that aspect. Then suddenly the other macroeconomics in terms of policy decisions which really had a lot of bearing in our case. We won the project, we were about to start the rollout and suddenly a Gram Panchayat Sabha is called and they're told you cannot go ahead with the project, or the ministries change and files just don't move. Those were things which really impacted us. Or for example, I had taken an initiative where I persuaded everyone that we will procure diesel against C-form purchase in Odisha from Andhra Pradesh IOCL or HPCL or from Haldia. Now suddenly 1.5 years into that, and we were saving around we were consuming 50,000 liters of diesel per day. That's around 2.5 lakhs per day of savings, which is around 10 crores per annum. On a project of that scale where top line is 100 crores, it's huge.
Amount.
And suddenly on a macroeconomic level, people said that Mr. Naveen Patnaik is going to take away this benefit, come what may. And then those kind of things were, a lot of these issues were happening. For example, Coal India, they outsourced this entire project to us. We started producing, but then they did not have the wherewithal in the initial stage to stock this coal.
Right.
And the stockyards were full of coal, they did not have the wagon allotment to dispatch it anywhere. So while end user plants were starving of coal, there was coal which was actually caught fire because of the high sulfur content in Odisha. So we actually liaised with Railway Ministry that in the monsoon period where food grain, this Mahanadi coalfield, that food grain, if the wagons are not utilized, let's please allot them to MCL, get this evacuated, because there was one loose end in the contract which we had signed with them that any losses till the final dispatch reconciliation will be to our account. So even if we dispatch them and put it in the stockyard and it would have burned, technically we are responsible for that. Even though we interacted with the CMD, my bosses interacted with the CMD, said nothing to your account, but yes, that was the harsh reality because our internal auditors raised this point and the internal audit report directly to group channel. So you cannot question.
Consequential damages clause was overlooked when you evaluated the project.
So no, yeah, I would say that initially there was overzealousness to enter the project. So that is why in this EA role where I see that one of my roles would be to actually look at investment proposals. I see that this is one of the most delicate roles which can happen in a company because eventually if things go wrong, heads start rolling. And my company was still Aditya Birla Group, so they have a tolerance for human mistakes, but there could be companies where you simply have to quit overnight.
But equally, Aditya Birla Group in the coal allotment is listed as one of the companies which is under investigation.
Sir, yes, Mr. Birla was allotted, named as this, and you would have some central ministers came out the same evening in his support, all leading industries. Sir, Aditya Birla Group is one of the groups which is really, sir, I have actually seen in meetings that Mr. Birla is so particular about ethics and walking the fine line that he'll say no to a project rather than actually getting it done to the wrong way. So this was a part of political conspiracy, whatever happened, and we see so far they are even thinking now of withdrawing the charge sheet because they have nothing to substantiate that. The coal secretary at that time had recommended something, and you bring in Mr. Birla into the picture and tarnish the image of one of the most respected business leaders. I don't think that really holds much water. That was more to politics rather than doing something really wrong. The Idea Cellular actually was one of the few telecom companies which were not hit the headlines. Even the Tata hit the headlines for wrong reasons in the telecom thing, but we did not. So as a policy, sir, I have seen that implemented in our company. They do not. He does not. So there was this one M&A proposal where we were trying to buy a iron ore pellet plant. So we worked on the deal for four months. And then there was this one clause that environmental clearance for this plant, this was in Jajpur, Kyunjhar somewhere, was not there. So you had the liberty to actually operate that without the environmental clearance. But given the kind of statutory risk involved, it was very clear, no statutory violations whatsoever, even if it means losing out on business.
Right. And EA role also requires a lot of, a very high level of analytical skill.
Yes.
So can you share an example where you would have really used high level of analytical skill of yours?
So analytical skills, as in, if you look at, for example, all the places that I have worked, Deloitte, ITC, Tata Steel and Analytical, I have been, 50% of my job has been actually analysis of data. When I was in Tata Steel, so I joined their post-qualification. I was in charge of financial forecasting for the $16 billion Tata Steel Europe chorus. So from scratch, I built an integrated forecasting model for chorus, which meant capturing data from hot metal and liquid steel production to eventually aggregating data for Port Talbot, Scunthorpe, Rotterdam. I was in all the various plants, building that to the corporate level, integrating that with Singapore, Thailand, India, and then bringing all the corporate adjustments for IFRS, IGAP difference, or the hedging, whether we have to market or swap accounting, everything. So the kind of data that I was handling. And sir, if you recall, so like 2009-10 were times where Europe steel industry was going through turbulent times again. So there was negative growth, and Chorus was a leverage buyout with $5 billion kind of debt on its books. Things were simply not working out. We were defaulting on covenants. We paid a covenant reset fee to get them repaid. So on a daily basis, Mr. Kaushik Chatterjee, the group CFO, my boss was reporting directly to, so I was part of that core team. We used to evaluate 7 to 8 options of asset or debt restructuring. So sell off this plant, bring in this equity infusion, refinance the loan. So handling 7-8 data scenarios together for the entire group, I used to do that through my basic Excel models, and I was not given the liberty to even use any systems because systems were not amenable to change as fast as the dynamics of the external environment in that time. You suddenly had the China import factor coming in, and systems would be completely clueless. You would have to reduce. So I was handling a humongous quantum of data, and eventually that boiled down to one PowerPoint slide.
So with the hindsight, do you think it was right for Tata Steel to have acquired Chorus?
That's a very
From
different
valuation perspective, especially.
So it's like this, that the valuation in an M&A transaction, you got to be lucky to get valuation correct. So because it's just like a cycle. So sometimes, sir, in M&A you have to play this SIP route, which they talk in terms of mutual fund also. Because
that's why I'm saying it's with the hindsight. I agree with what you're saying, but with the hindsight.
Yeah, we paid slightly more than, sir, and it would have done really well had the double whammy was we paid more, and we paid more at the peak of the cycle. So that's why. Otherwise, for the first 2 quarters, till September 2008, the first quarter of the cash flow generation, we repaid so much of loan of Chorus, but then things went really okay.
So now this is a hindsight. Now reflect back on the analysis that you did at the time you did.
I was not part of the M&A of Chorus.
No, but you mentioned that you collected all
Subsequently,
the data, you did the financial model,
Yeah.
right? So that was subsequent to acquisition,
Yes.
not before. Okay. And if you were to do that all over again, the modeling that you did, and based on that you developed some recommendations, what aspects would you do differently at this moment if you were to do it again?
So one thing that I learned from financial modeling, my limited experience, is that you will not be able to take investment decisions if you were to stick by the financial model, because the financial model has its own limitations. even this $2 billion project of Mahan which we eventually you have to take a strategic call that yes, my financial model says that I cannot bid below 770, but because my competitor is bidding below 750, I will have to bid at 745 and then allow operational efficiencies to come. So similarly for Chorus, if we were to build the model again, now yes, we would use a lot of CRU data, but again sir, I think M&A, because I did work on a couple of transactions in Aditya Birla Group also. The entire concept of M&A based on a financial model would not really work out, because financial model would assume, let's say, linearity in terms of HRC prices. So you have got every year just a 3% incremental growth. That does not happen in real life. But yes, what I now have learned is that you should build in all sensitivities, build in the worst case scenarios, the base case scenarios, the optimistic scenarios, bring in a couple of externalities, by couple, in fact 4 or 5 of all the shocks that would happen, and bring a consolidated view to top management so that they know exactly what they are committing the company to. That is my limited role that I can play as a data analyst.
Right, Anurag, step back. You spoke about this external political thing, and you spoke about just naming. So let's give that a try. In large organization or a company, there's some politics that was being built in the company.
Yeah.
Happens?
Yes, sir.
Have you been a victim of this politics, and has it affected your work?
So it's not, what I faced was not politics per se, but what I faced was when this project which I was talking about, this Manali Coalfield, which lost 30% of its net worth, there was a lot of mayhem in the organization as to people were playing a blame game. So the financial modeling guy was blaming the technical team for not giving the correct input, the technical team was blaming someone else, and it was like concentrated. So we were in charge of project execution. So my boss, and to be very honest, the CFO and my boss were not seeing eye to eye, and they were blasting us that we were not implementing the project properly, and that is why it was yielding losses. Wherein the baseline was that the bid price was so low that no one in the world could have made profits out of that, doing things in the transparent way. So that level, that politics actually should percolate down to bottom level also, but fortunately in my case, we were very seamless at the lower level. We knew that our bosses don't see eye to eye, but at the lower level we actually cooperated with each other, and I said that we have to work in the best interest of the company.
Very mature way of compliments to you, because very often that politics percolates only the last.
No, eventually one boss got transferred, he got transferred somewhere else, and we were left. So had we had a lot of animosity between us, we would not have.
Anurag, one observation. You seem to have done a lot of interesting work already as a PA, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything more that you would like to do? Is there anything more that you think you can learn?
Sir, like I have not been part of an M&A transaction which is actually fructified. So I have looked at, my PPP projects in coal have fructified, but M&A transactions have actually fructified. I have not seen that. Again, then businesses will change. Sir, as I said, even the life for a chairman will be repetitive in some way or the other. But in this, sir, the EA role, I do not want to become an EA for the rest of my life. But the point is that I am only 29 and a half now. For 2-3 years, so the best thing which I said as I like about the EA role is that it gives you access to top management, whereas a silent listener also at times, you get to listen to a lot of conversation which you would never have done. So, so that's why I think, and then when companies change, the whole philosophy will be different.
And you mentioned that you're not going to be here for the of your life. I agree with that. So what would be other professions and careers that you'd like to pursue? Say a couple of years time when you've done that, what would be next?
Sir, I would like to move to the again finance function in a senior level in charge of a specific SBU.
Okay.
So even if that's a very small SBU, 50 crores or 100 crores, that's fine with me.
But
But
like to do end-to-end finance.
I would want to do the end-to-end thing for a small SBU.
That's consistent with the normal career path you start out for someone like
Yes, so being in the EA role allows me to understand that how does the finance function actually impact the company as a whole. And then, but then that's my specialization, because I'm a CA.
And another question, you work with a number of different companies. You work with Tata Steel, Aditya Birla Group. ITC,
Yeah.
Deloitte, these are all very different companies. Culturally, they are different, besides product lines being different, businesses being different. But forget about product line and business. But culturally, where do you feel more at home? In these kinds of four different environments.
So I think Tata Steel and any company which allows individuals to make mistakes in the initial phase. So because you will make that.
Sure.
So when I joined Tata Steel, I was so dead scared that I actually said I will not do this job. So because I saw those Excel sheets with 1500 rows. I said, what is this? My boss said that I will pay you salary for 6 months. We are Tata Steel. We will not fire you unless you are caught taking a bribe. But I want you to make an honest contribution every day. And in the next 4 months, the kind of model which I built up, it was presented to Mr. Kaushik Chatterjee and then to iBankers, and it was said that this is completely capturing all the details. So I think this kind of an environment where initially, sir, any person will have its low moments of confidence because work is complex. But then when bosses give you that kind of assurance that we are there with you come what may. So in my current job also in Aditya Birla, when I used to talk to this cross-functional team, so I would have my own set of inhibitions that how can I question the CEO of a project. But my boss said that as long as the assumptions under which you are speaking are correct, even though they might eventually be turned down, you have complete latitude to just go ahead. Because we have to add value to the whole thing. We are not chartered accountants to just do data crunching and make MIS reports and do reconciliation, because that many chartered accountants think that that's the end of the story for them. But therefore I would love to work with companies which give you that kind of an enabling environment that, so because any individual who makes a sincere effort, after a point of time he will deliver.
Any other aspects of environment besides this?
And then yes, I would want to work with companies which are wanting to grow well. For example, RPG Group. RPG Group today has around 42% or something of its turnover from overseas operations. And by 2016, we have a vision that it should grow to 50%. So we are all now looking at internationalization of our operations. So now, in that scenario, the challenges become manifold because you are going to work in cross-functional territories, work with different cultures, maybe do a couple of acquisitions in order to smoothen the transition process. So in that case, I think I would love to work with those companies which do not believe in status quo, because that has been my philosophy as well. I could have opted in any of the roles which I have had. My bosses have always asked me not to leave, but I said, sir, this is enough in my current role. I want to experience something else. Even a decision to do PGPX, I think there was no valid reason to do it, except the fact that I wanted a new experience.
But interesting, you mentioned about PGPX. So in what way has it influenced the way you think as an executive assistant? Anything you would do differently?
For example, sir, I think, to be honest, what happens in PGPX is that you get to know a lot of concepts which you will not be able to master. But then if someone, a functional specialist actually talks them, he cannot hoodwink you into, you talk about bullwhip effect. So I am not someone who will actually work on supply chain, but when someone talks about that term and see how the inventory in the system gets amplified beyond a point, I know what he is talking about. So you have an awareness of things. So in PGPX, I retain my core competencies which I had at the beginning of the course, but as far as the other areas are concerned, be it supply chain or marketing, I am now aware of the kind of thought processes which go into those functions. And it helps me appreciate them, and also as an EA, because I have to interact with that cross-functional team, and they might throw jargon, for example, and just say that, okay, what do you understand as a CA? You've not ever read it. Okay, I have read it in PGPX. I know what this concept is. What data is
So that is, and as you work for these companies, can you describe a person who you really admired as a role model?
Yeah, my current boss. So after I became my boss moved to Egypt. The next boss which I had, he was GM Business Development, Mr. Singal. He is my role model because he is one person who inspires you by his sheer personality. He's given his entire last 10 years to the company. So even at the expense of be it family life, be it his personal life, whatever. And the best part about him is that he again, as I said, he allows you to make mistakes and he gives you that latitude to think and question critically, because he tells me that I have always believed that I am an entrepreneur. Although I am having a Form 16, I am getting a paid salary, but I am an entrepreneur within Aditya Birla Group, and I want you to be also that. So when you are working on an M&A transaction, don't just think that this is a DCF model which Mr. Birla is going to take a decision. Think that if it is my 300 crores, will I do it or not?
So that really inspired you those times.
Yeah, and with that kind of things, there are a lot of things. So even if he calls me on Saturday midnight and asks me to work, because he's actually given that kind of an inspiration, he allowed me to sit in board meetings as in the business head meetings. So I am really obligated at it.
So now, if you think about yourself, what aspects of your personality or leadership style will inspire others?
As far as my style is concerned, I think I tend to trust people a lot, and I really tend to respect their intellectual capability. And when an individual knows that he is being respected for what he is, and I will not be someone who will take away the credit of someone's work and showcases at my work, I will give complete credit to that person. So this style of leadership which I learned from my bosses, I think this is one of the best ways to enable your juniors to actually do work with a lot of pride. So I think in leadership the critical challenge is that a junior might feel that I am being paid, that you just do things which can just pass muster. But then how do you bring this sparkle into his eye and make him believe that I am the process owner? Like my boss also, that project which I was acting as an EA, I was just in the hierarchy was no one, job at 10 is nothing. But then I used to feel as passionate about the project as if it's my project. And I used to think day in and day out, every day morning, and when I used to enter office, I used to come up with one idea, sir, why can't we store this today? Why can't we think of CFOM? Why can't we think of talking to the Coal India officials this time? So,
and at the start of our conversation, we were talking about Aditya Bansal.
yeah.
And now we know him very well because he's been with us. And you know him, it seems to me.
I have just interacted with him a couple of
So in what way you are similar or different than him?
This is a bit tough because every individual is quite unique.
Indeed.
I think we share the same academic background, chartered accountancy, and we've really done CA very well because, okay, he's in a different level, he's got single digit rank. I've got 22nd and 23rd.
Which is still pretty high.
Yeah, but yes, both of us actually, I think as far as the similarities are concerned, being from a profession where we've really slogged it out to get our degree in terms of CA, we value data and analytical capabilities and know that we have to contribute. From a professor, I do not know him much personally because I've never met him as in mostly talked on phone. Yeah, but then we know that we have to add value to a business wherever we are working. That is important. And differences, the level of achievement are very different because he is in a different field. I'm maybe whatever, but yes, like he was the gold medalist of PGPX and I will not be
Now it's getting very personal. So, any question from your side if you'd like to check with us?
Sir, I read about this very unique concept called YEV in the RPG group where you have individuals below the age of 40 who form part of this, and so what I got to read was that you can actually get to ask for what are the strategic rationale why decisions were taken in business. So how exactly does it work down, and how is it actually impacted?
So this is basically delayering the whole structure because we have a lot of bright young people with lots of ideas. So some amongst them we have picked and constituted a young executive board that works like a shadow board, reports direct to the CEO, and they have access to all information in the company. And they can really meet as a board and ask any question, they can debate any aspects of the company's working, and then they bubble up some recommendations. It could be on policies, it could be on business direction, it could be on any particular investment decisions. So that way, the CEO is benefiting by fresh minds who don't have any other agenda. Sometimes you mentioned about politics and what have you, so it gets filtered. So CEO is getting unfiltered recommendations. And also, these young people are getting connected to the senior management.
But can they give inputs as well? Like say if your view is contrary to the decision taken.
Yeah, they would critique. They would say this policy is not right, or this particular decision is not right. We believe these are the implications. Other way around also, sometimes the senior management may also give them assignments, like some of the things which we're doing, water business, investment in the railway business. The entire strategy was done by the young executive board. Renewables, that was done by a young executive board. So we said, figure it out whether it makes sense for us to go into this business. So that's how it works. And so in all our large companies, we have young executive board.
But I think I really found it to be a very interesting part about.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you have to find ways and means of connecting with people right across the ranks and files of the organization, and this is one way. And it's not that you're permanently a member of that board. You're there for 2 years. One person is appointed as a chairperson, and it rotates. So chairperson will change. Also, the membership of the young executive board also changes. So some people will go out, and new people will come in. So there is some continuity, but some refreshing as well. So that's how it works. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.